I'm a very big believer in equal opportunity as opposed to equal outcome. I don't believe in equal outcome because, unfortunately, life's not like that, and it'd be a pretty boring place if it was. But I really believe in equal opportunity, and equal opportunity to me, more than anything, means a great education. Probably, you know, the second, maybe even more important is a great family life, but I don't know how to do that. I don't think anybody knows how to do that. But it pains me because we do know how to provide a great education. We really do. If we got our act together, we could make sure that every young child in this country got a great education. And we fall far short of that. And I know from my own education that if I hadn't encountered 2 or 3 individuals that spent extra time with me, I'm sure I would have been in jail. I'm 100% sure if it hadn't have been for Mrs. Hill in 4th grade and a few others, but maybe even especially her, I absolutely would have ended up in jail. Because I could see those tendencies in myself to sort of have a certain energy to do something, and it could have been directed to doing something interesting that other people thought was a good idea, or doing something interesting that other people maybe didn't like so much. And so, I think when you're young, a little bit of course correction goes a long way. And I think it takes pretty talented people to do that. And I don't know that enough of them get attracted to go into public education. You can't even support a family on what you get paid. And if you're smart, I sort of feel if somebody's smart enough that you want to turn your kids over to them for the majority of their childhood. I mean, the majority of their waking hours in their childhood are spent not with your parents, but with your teachers. I'd like the people that are teaching my kids to be good enough that they could get a job at the company I work for making $100,000 a year. Well, why should they work at a school for $35,000, $40,000 a year if they could get a job here at $100,000 a year? I mean, is that an intelligence test? I mean, so I think we should basically be hiring them and paying them $100,000 a year, but the problem there, of course, is the unions. The unions are the worst thing that ever happened to education because it's not a meritocracy. It turns into a bureaucracy, which is exactly what's happened. And teachers can't teach, and administrators run the place, and nobody can be fired. It's terrible.
Well, some people say that this new technology may be the networking world, if you will, may be a way to bypass that. Are you up?
No, I absolutely don't believe that. And as you pointed out, I've probably helped put more computers in more schools than anybody else in the world, and I'm up until this point in time, and I'm absolutely convinced that that is by no means the most important thing. Now, the most important thing is another person. Another person that incites your curiosity, that guides your curiosity, that feeds your curiosity. And machines cannot do that in the same way people can. The elements of discovery are around you. You don't need a computer to know. I mean, here. Why does that fall? You know why? Nobody knows why. Nobody in the entire world knows why that falls. We can describe it pretty accurately, but no one knows why. I don't need a computer to get a kid interested in that, to spend a week playing with gravity and trying to understand it and come up with reasons why.
But you do need a person.
You do need a person. And so, especially with computers the way they are now, computers are very reactive. But they are not proactive. They are not agents, if you will. They are very reactive. So what children need is something much more proactive. And they need a guide. They don't need an assistant. And I think we have the material to solve this problem in the world. It's just being deployed in other places. And I've been very strong believer that what we need to do in education is go to the full voucher system. I know this isn't what you care about, but this is what I care about a great deal.
Well, this is exactly what we care about.
Okay, great.
This was, believe it or not, this was at the end.
One of the things that I feel is that right now, if you ask who are the customers of education, the customers of education are the society at large, employers that hire people, right, things like that. But ultimately, I think the customers are the parents, not even the students, but the parents. And the problem that we have in this country is that the customers went away. The customers stopped paying attention to their schools for the most part.
And gave their kids to the...
Well, what happened was that mothers started working, and they didn't have time to spend at PTA meetings and watching their kids' school. Schools became much more institutionalized, and parents spent less and less and less time involved in their kids' education. And what happens when a customer goes away and a monopoly gets control, which is what's happened in our country, is that the service level almost always goes down. I remember seeing a bumper sticker when the telephone company was all one, AT&T, the Bell system. I remember seeing a bumper sticker with the Bell logo on it, and it said, "We don't care, we don't have to," you know? And that's what a monopoly is. That's what IBM was in their day, and that's certainly what the public school system is. They don't have to care. Now, it turns out, let's go through some economics. The most expensive thing most people buy in their lives is a house. Second most expensive thing is a car, usually. And a car costs, average car is approximately about $20,000 now, $16,000, $20,000. And an average car lasts about, what, 8 years? Right? You buy another one. So, approximately, $2,000 a year, right, for an 8-year commitment. Well, your child goes to school, right, approximately 8 years in K through 8, right? You don't like to switch schools. It's about an 8-year commitment. What does the state of California spend per pupil per year in a public school? What they spend per year per pupil is about $4,400. Okay? About over twice as much as a car. Now, it turns out that when you go to buy a car, you have a lot of information available to you to make a choice, and you have a lot of choices. I mean, General Motors and Ford and Toyota and Chrysler and Nissan, they are advertising at me like crazy. I can't get through a day without seeing 5 car ads. And they seem to be able to make these cars efficiently enough that they can afford to take some of my money and advertise to other people with it, so that everybody knows all about these cars. And they keep getting better and better and better each year because there's a lot of competition. And there's a warranty, that's right. But in schools, since people don't feel like they're spending their own money, they feel like it's free, right? No one does any comparison shopping. Matter of fact, if you want to put your kid in a private school, you can't take the $4,400 a year out of the public school and use it. You have to come up with, $5,000 or $6,000 of your own, or even $4,400 of your own money. I believe very strongly that if the country gave each parent a voucher, a check for $4,400 that they could only spend at any accredited school, that several things would happen. Number one, schools would start marketing themselves like crazy to parents to get students. Secondly, I think you see a lot of new schools starting. I've suggested as an example, if you go to Stanford Business School, they have a public policy track. They could start a school administrator track. So you could get a bunch of people coming out of college, tying up with somebody who just got out of business school. They could be starting their own schools. You could have 25-year-old kids out of college, very idealistic, full of energy. Instead of starting a Silicon Valley company, they'd start a school. And I believe they would do far better than many of our public school teachers do. The third thing you'd see is I believe that you would see the quality of schools, again, just like in a competitive market, start to rise. Some schools would go broke. A lot of the public schools would go broke. There's no question about it. It would be rather painful for the first several years.
Deservedly so.
But I think far less painful than the kids going through the system as it is right now. And some people, the biggest complaint is, of course, that schools would pick off all the good kids and all the bad kids would be left to wallow together in either a private school or the remnants of the public school. To me, that's like saying, well, all the car manufacturers are going to make BMWs and Mercedeses and nobody's going to make a $10,000 car. Well, I think the most hotly competitive market right now is the $10,000 car area. You've got, you know, all the Japanese playing in it. You've got General Motors that spent $5 billion subsidizing Saturn so far so that they can compete in that market. You've got Ford, which has just introduced 2 new cars in that market. You've got Chrysler with the Neon. So
you're spending $32,000 and you're getting a $500 used car in some cases.
The market competition model seems to indicate that where there is a need, there is a lot of providers willing to tailor their products to fit that need, and a lot of competition which keeps forcing them to get better and better. So I think the problems we've got, I used to think when I was in my 20s that technology was the solution to most of the world's problems. And unfortunately, it ain't so. It's sort of, I'll give you an analogy. A lot of times we think, why is television programming so bad? Why are television shows so demeaning, so poor? And the first thought that occurs to you is, well, there's a conspiracy. The networks are feeding us this slop because it's cheap to produce, because of this, because of that. It's the networks that are controlling this, and they are feeding us this stuff to try to dumb down the American public. But the truth of the matter, of course, if you study it in any depth, is the networks absolutely want to give people what they want so that they watch the shows. If people wanted something different, they would get it. And the truth of the matter is, the shows that are on television because that's what people want. The majority of the people in this country want to turn on the television and turn off their brain. And that's what they get. And that's far more depressing than a conspiracy. Conspiracies are much more fun than the truth of the matter, which is that a vast majority of the American public are pretty mindless most of the time. I think the school situation is equally, there's a parallel here when it comes to technology. It is so much more hopeful to think that technology can solve the problems that are really more human and more organizational and more political in nature. And it ain't so. We need to attack these things at the root, which is people, and how much freedom we give people, the competition that will attract the best people. Unfortunately, the side effect of pushing out a lot of 46-year-old teachers that lost their spirit, 15 years ago and shouldn't be teaching right now. So I think I feel very strongly about this. And I wish it was as simple as giving every kid a computer, but it won't work.